With the NBA season right around the corner, we have a lot of things that we can look forward to in this upcoming NBA season. Guys, we're going to be looking at the big question for every team in the Western Conference, and then we're going to make our predictions of the 8 to 10 teams who I think will be making the play-in and NBA playoffs. So if you guys want to go see the Eastern Conference version, it's always on the channel. The link will be in the description. Make sure you drop a like on this video, subscribe, and let's get right into this episode. So we're going to go ahead and start with the Western Conference in this episode. We are going to do it by division like I did in the Eastern Conference. Again, if you guys haven't watched that, I highly recommend. If you haven't watched or listened to the episode on Spotify, and I highly recommend you do that with a previous episode. Watching on YouTube, I'm in a different setting. I'm at my house now, so I'm at my actual official setup here, so I feel a lot more in my element. So we're gonna jump right into it, and we're gonna start with the Los Angeles Lakers. And the big question with them is, can LeBron, AD stay healthy? Can the team stay healthy and consistent? You know, one thing that I feel like was an issue for the Lakers I feel like LeBron and AD have had some health concerns over the last couple of seasons, and if they can stay healthy, they are for sure a top 3 to 4 team in the Western Conference. But if they want to win a championship, they've got to stay healthy, and that's the big thing. Can they stay healthy? Because if they do, they have a deep roster, and I think that it really does come down to health. If they're not healthy, they're not going to do anything. And then you got the consistency. How are these new guys going to gel with LeBron and AD? Move on to the Los Angeles Clippers, and it's the same question. Can they stay healthy? Kawhi and Paul George have literally barely played for them in the last couple of years, especially Kawhi hasn't really been available, especially come playoff time. And this is a Clippers team that's built to win now. They're built to win a championship, and they've traded so many assets, so many young players to get the roster they have now. They have one of the deepest teams, arguably the deepest team in the NBA. And if they can stay healthy, they are a threat, surefire in the Western Conference. But the question is can Kawhi and Paul George put together a full season and postseason to do that for the Clippers? And I think that is the question that has yet to be answered. So the next team we're going to jump into is the Phoenix Suns. Are they the best team in the West? You look at the team that they have, they for sure look like they're going to have the best offense. You've got Bradley Beal, you've got Kevin Durant. Like, when you've got a team as stacked as this, you realize that this is the expectation, championship or bust. And I don't know if it's championship or bust, but they've traded a lot of assets to get KD, to get Bradley Beal. So they're obviously going all in. And the question is, if this doesn't work, what's next? So are they the best team in the West? And if this doesn't work, what is truly next for the Phoenix Suns? Because I don't know, you can't really blow this up, but you are putting a lot of pressure on this team, and they've done a pretty solid job of putting the pieces around KD, Brad, and D-Book. So are they the best team in the West? We will see come regular season. Next, we have the Sacramento Kings. And can they build off of last season? Is this a team that is just a one-hit wonder, or are they actually a good team that can build off of last season? They were a 3 seed in the West, lost in 7 to the West. Can they be a better team than they were last year? I think the big thing with Sacramento was they had this electrifying offense, but they weren't a good defensive team. Can they improve on the defensive side of the ball and build off of last season? They could have won that series, but they didn't. And I think Sacramento definitely has a framework. De'Aaron Fox really had a breakout year last year, and the trade of Tyrese Halliburton no longer looks as bad for Sacramento now. So, I mean, it works out. So can the Kings build off of last season? I think that's the big question when you look at the Sacramento Kings. And then finally, the Golden State Warriors. How will Chris Paul fit? CP3 was a weird acquisition for the Warriors to me. I don't know why they traded for him. I get they wanted to probably get off of the Jordan Poole contract. You know, they paid Jordan Poole king's ransom, and it's not like he didn't deserve it for how he played in the finals, but you can admit that he probably is a little overpaid, and they needed to get off that contract. The issue was you gave him all that money, so you had to move off that contract, but then you trade him for a significantly older player that you're probably only going to get maybe 1 or 2 years out of. So Chris Paul is going to be 39, 40 years old, and how much can he contribute to this Warriors squad? How is he going to fit alongside Steph and Clay? They're gonna probably run some small ball lineups with CP at the point, Steph at the two, Clay at the three. Probably put Wiggins at the four and Dre at the five. So that's gonna be an interesting little experiment. Golden State is we and seeing Chris Paul. Can we admit that seeing Chris Paul in a Warriors jersey is the single weirdest thing in the world? So how will he fit in Golden State is the big question. So we are now going to jump to the next division and talk about the five teams there. And I think a lot of these are going to be very interesting, especially with this next division, because there's some teams that, they're kind of in weird spots. And that's a lot of teams in the West. I feel like it's a lot more in the West than in the East. Teams that are kind of in weird spots. And honestly, you could make the argument that teams in the Western Conference have more question marks than teams in the East. So I think there are a lot of question marks with the Western Conference as opposed to the Eastern Conference. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and jump right into the next. So the next division is going to be the Nuggets, Blazers, Jazz, T-Wolves, and the Thunder. So we're going to go ahead and start with the Denver Nuggets. And can they repeat with arguably a weaker roster? You can make the argument the Nuggets have a weaker team than they did last year. And the question is can they repeat? You lose guys like Bruce Brown and stuff of that nature, guys who are key contributors to this team. Now, I don't think Denver is significantly weaker. They didn't lose that much, but I do think their roster may have arguably gotten worse, but not by a substantial amount. I still think that they're arguably the best team in the West. But I think it's to be seen. Can they repeat? Because a big thing for Denver has also been health. Can Jamal Murray and the rest of that squad stay healthy? Guys get hurt, and it happens. But we see what the Nuggets can do when they're healthy. So my question is can they repeat with what's going on with this team? And I think they have it in them. But I think we have to really hold our breath about the Nuggets' repeat chances. We're going to jump into the Portland Trailblazers next. And how will the young guys look? They just blew it up, just traded Dame. And how is this going to perform? You've got Scoot, you've got Anthony Simons, you still got Jeremy Grant on that massive contract. Damian Lillard is a day one for real because he got him paid, then dipped. I think that's insane. Jeremy Grant got a massive contract that can they even move off of? I don't even think they're going to be able to move off of that contract, at least not right now. And even then, I think they can't trade him right now, even if they wanted to. Could they just sign them or re-signed him? And then you've got, Rob Williams, who's a good new addition. So, you've got interesting pieces, and DeAndre Ayton. So you got interesting pieces, and I'm interested to see how the young guys and this roster gel together. So Portland is not going to be a good team, but it's definitely going to be some fun moments seeing what those guys can do. And it will be refreshing seeing the Blazers not trying to struggle for a play-in spot, knowing that they should be rebuilding. So I think the Blazers are one of the teams that don't really have a lot of question marks anymore. The Utah Jazz, and do they want to be competitive or do they want to tank? And really, for Utah, it doesn't matter. They're in a great position. Utah has a lot of assets. They have a boatload of draft picks. They don't have as many as OKC, but I do believe they have the second most draft picks in the league right now. Utah is in a fantastic spot. And if they wanted to be competitive, they could for sure compete for a play-in spot. They literally almost did it last year and chose to start tanking for a better pick. I think personally the Jazz should tank, try to get a bona fide star, especially if Lauri Markkanen continues to play the way he played. That's the big question. Is he going to continue to play like a star, or was that just a one-off season? We've seen guys do that before. So is that going to continue? And then you got guys like John Collins on the roster who they just traded for a few months ago. Still got guys like Jordan Clarkson. So, they've got pieces on that team if they want to be competitive, but they've also got using those guys like assets and trade them and get even more picks. So the Jazz aren't in a bad spot. They're in a spot where they have options. And honestly, that's a pretty good spot to be considering you just traded Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert a year ago. So can't be mad at that for the Utah Jazz. You look at the Minnesota Timberwolves, and they have more questions because Is Rudy Gobert going to fit? And is Karl Anthony Towns the odd man out? We got to really think about it. I've been seeing a lot of rumors lately about the Minnesota Timberwolves potentially looking at trading Karl Anthony Towns, and maybe not the franchise itself, but I've been seeing rumors of people saying that they should exactly look into that. And I feel like that is a good route to go down if it was time to blow it up, because Anthony Edwards is the clear number one on this team now. And Karl Anthony Towns has a history of kind of coming up short in the playoffs. And is he the guy that you want to be your legitimate number two? Because you're going to get more value out of him than Rudy Gobert in a trade. There's going to be a team that's going to trade for Karl Anthony Towns, and the question is how much can you get back? Because that would really be just trying to recoup the assets that you lost in the Rudy Gobert trade, which I believe the T-Wolves now realize that was a mistake. They shouldn't have really made that trade in the first place, but you can repair that. And then another thing is with Karl Anthony Towns, with his contract, you should be able to get some rotation pieces as well that could help this team. But you want to make sure you do all the right things to make sure that Anthony Edwards doesn't become unhappy and want to leave, because Minnesota has had a history of losing stars. So you don't want the T-Wolves to be in the same situation with KG like with Anthony Edwards now. So it's definitely something to look out for. And then, is this the year that the Oklahoma City Thunder threaten the Western Conference? Maybe not threaten for a championship, but is this the year that they're a legitimate playoff team and can actually cause a little bit of a headache for any contender that they face in the first round? They've got an insanely deep young team. Chet Holmgren has looked good so far. Shea is an all-star. And then you've got other guys like Lou Dort, guys on this roster like Josh Giddey. And you've got a really nice, young, solid team that can genuinely not just be great offensively, but they can be really good defensively. And I think they are a good defensive team. I think the Thunder are going to be a play-in, play-off team this year. Look out for OKC. They're going to be a threat. So that division has been wrapped up. Those are the questions that I have for those teams. So now we're going to get into the final division in the Western Conference. And then after that, we're going to talk about my predictions of what teams I think will be where in the Western Conference, specifically for the playoffs and the play-in. And that is going to do it for this episode. So we only got a little bit left to talk about, but we are definitely going to deep dive into a lot more NBA related content for those of you who like NBA stuff, especially during the regular season, which starts in less than 2 weeks. So definitely looking forward to that. So I would definitely follow the podcast on Spotify. Social media is all in the links below, and subscribe to the YouTube channel so you guys can keep up with. So the final division that we're going to talk about begins with the San Antonio Spurs. How will they utilize Wemby? I feel like he has shown in the preseason he has superstar potential. Like, he has shown he is going to be dynamic on offense. He is going to be almost impossible to guard. And then defensively, he is going to have an impact from day one. I think we know that his defensive impact will be there from day one. But I'm interested to see how they utilize him offensively. I know defensively he can be an anchor, but offensively, how are they going to use him? He can shoot the ball. He can put the ball on the floor. He can attack the basket. He can do a lot of different things on the offensive side of the ball. So I'm really interested to see how do the Spurs utilize Wembanyama this season. And I think that is going to be interesting. I think another thing is, how much are they going to limit him? Because I know they're not going to play him every game. So I'm very interested to see how that works, especially with the new rules coming in about players doing load management and things of that nature. So I'm very interested to see how that works. Looking at the Houston Rockets, what is the plan this year? Because they are one of the most confusing teams to me. They have a young roster. You got guys like Jabari Smith. You got guys like Alperen Sengun, who's kind of been underrated, especially with his development. He's been looking good. You got guys like Jalen Green, who have flashes and definitely has star potential. And then you draft guys like Cam Whitmore. You get one of the twins. And then you've got this young core, right, that clearly has potential and upside. And then you sign guys like Fred VanVleet, which I think he was overpaid. You definitely paid a lot for him, but he's got enough veteran leadership that he's going to go in and he's going to lead this team and add some structure. So I do think, generally speaking, he is a good addition to the roster. Financially, probably not. You add Dylan Brooks, who is kind of the opposite, but he's more of like a depth competitive piece to add to this team. So I think the Rockets have a very It's like you make moves to be competitive, but you kind of aren't really supposed to be that competitive this year. Like this is supposed to be like OKC year where you're supposed to show that you have the potential to be competitive, but you're not yet there, right? I think Houston could make the play in this year. I think they have the roster to do that, especially if Jalen Green and those guys who have been there take a leap. So I'm very fascinated to see how this goes for the Rockets. But really, it is, what is the plan? Do you want to play in the play-in, or are we just what's going on? Because I just don't think you sign a guy like Dylan Brooks, especially, and don't want to be competitive. So yeah, when you look at the Mavericks, how does Kyrie and Luka work? I think this is interesting because Dallas, I think, is going to, at least last year, they were an electrifying offensive team. Obviously, we know they're going to score a lot of points with those two, but they can't guard anything. So this year, they probably got a little better defensively, but how does Luka and Kyrie work? I think it can work. There is a world where it can and will work, but will they see that? How does that work? How does that get there, right? So I'm interested to see how did the Mavericks get to that point with Kyrie and Luka, because you, with two guys that aren't really great defensively, but are amazing offensively and can do so many different things, you got to put a lot of defensive pieces around them. I think Grant Williams was a great addition, and he's probably going to be a starter. I think that was genuinely a needed addition to this team. So I'm interested to see how Dallas performs this year. And with the Grizzlies, how much does Marcus Smart and D Rose move the needle? So you lose Dylan Brooks, you add in Marcus Smart. I do think that was an upgrade. I think that was an upgrade on both sides of the ball. And then D Rose can be a great mentor, a great tone setter for John Morant. You know, they kind of same mold of a player. So I think that's a great thing. I do think the Grizzlies got better. I think Marcus Smart makes Memphis a better team. But does it move the needle to making them a legitimate championship level team? That's the question that is asked. How much of an improvement is Marcus Smart for this roster over Dylan Brooks, who is also a good defender? And do we believe Marcus Smart is a better defender than Dylan Brooks? I think these are questions, especially. And another thing is Jaren Jackson going to be a better player offensively? I mean, he averages around 16, 17 a game. Can he jump to a 20 points per game type of guy to assist John Morant in that category? Because we know there's Desmond Bane, right? And Jaren Jackson isn't a great rebounder, so can he improve? Because we know he is a defensive anchor. He is the defense of this team. So that's going to be very interesting, especially when you've got the last two depoys on your team. So next is the New Orleans Pelicans. The last team we're going to talk about is the Pelicans. And is this a make or break year? Personally, I think this is a make or break year for the New Orleans Pelicans. Zion has barely been healthy. He's been playing in preseason, but he's barely been healthy for you, barely been available. And then you look at this team that continuously misses the playoffs or barely gets in. They lost in the play-in last year. They don't have Zion. You still got Brandon Ingram. The roster's constantly changing. And if they don't make the playoffs this year, is this a year where the team has to look at maybe trading some of these guys and blowing it up? Because it's hard to let go of a guy like Zion, but it's like you really do have to think about it because the roster nothing's changing. And you traded for CJ McCollum, and it hasn't really moved the needle that much for the Pelicans like it should have. And there's a lot of questions with the future of this team. And I genuinely wonder, can the Pelicans make the playoffs, or is this going to be a year where they might have to blow it up because they could not achieve the goals that were set for them? They had such a high expectation when they got Lonzo, they got BI, they acquired Josh Hart, then you draft Zion. They had such high expectations to be the team of the future, to they're lowering every single year. So I don't know. I think the Pelicans might blow it up after this year, especially if they don't make the playoffs. So with that being said, now I'm going to go into my predictions for the 10 teams that are going to make the playoffs and the play-in. So look, we might have to beef on this one because I am so confused on how to. It was honestly harder to list the Western Conference teams than the East because I have my list right here. So Look, man, we're gonna have to just. So the first team I've got is Nuggets. I still think they have the best general team in the Western Conference. The cohesiveness, they're going to be coming back with pretty much the same roster. So I think the Nuggets are generally going to be the number one seed in the West again. And all of this is barring injury, by the way. I just want to say, like, barring injury, this is what I think the standings will be. At number 2, I've got the Memphis Grizzlies. I believe they are, again, going to be a top 3 seed. I think Marcus Smart definitely makes them a slightly better team. Maybe not moving the needle to we're going to win the championship, but I think that it's like we are definitely better. That's why I think the Grizzlies are saying. So, number 3, I have the Phoenix Suns. I think the Suns are a team that fully healthy can definitely win it all. But there are some holes because we need to see how that depth looks. They look like they added some good guys. They definitely added some names. But how is that going to look on this roster? That's the question. Number 4, I have the Lakers. It's an incredibly deep team, much better offseason. Got some shooters. Can LeBron and AD stay healthy? Barring injury again, I see the Lakers being a top 4 team. Number 5, Sacramento Kings. I do think they're going to make the playoffs. I don't think they're going to make a 3 seed or anything, but I do think they're going to make the playoffs again. I think the Kings are going to be a team that can definitely be a headache. I don't know if they're a second round team just yet, but I see the Kings being the 5th seed. 6th, I've got the Los Angeles Clippers. Barring any injuries, they shouldn't have to be in the play-in. Barring injury, but they should be a contender. But with no injuries, I think Kawhi and Paul George are still going to sit out some games if they can. But I think Paul George, Kawhi, if they're hurt, they'll finish lower than that. If they're healthy, they shouldn't have to be in the play-in. So in my play-in, at number 7, I've got the Golden State Warriors. I don't like the Chris Paul trade. I'm sorry, I just don't. It's just so weird to me, that trade. I don't know how it's gonna work. Maybe they're gonna prove me wrong. But I got the Warriors at 7. Still think they're gonna be a good team, but at number 8, I've got the Thunder. I think the Thunder are going to be a play-in team, and I would not be shocked if they make the playoffs this year. So I have the Thunder at number 8. Number 9, I have the Minnesota Timberwolves. I think as long as that roster sits together, they're going to be a play-in team. But I think it's going to take the play-in for them to get into the playoffs every year with that roster. They're going to have to make some big changes after the year, and it's not even a set in stone thing if they're going to make the playoffs. So I don't trust Minnesota fully to get in, but I trust them enough that I believe they can get to the play-in. And then finally, at number 10, I have the Dallas Mavericks. I think Kyrie and Luka are actually going to go for it this year, but I don't know if they're going to actually make the playoffs, but I do think they'll make the play-in. So those are my predictions. Those are the 10 teams I think are going to be competing in the playoffs and play-in for the NBA Western Conference playoffs. So let me know what you guys think. If you guys have any changes, let me know in the comments below, or let me know on social media. With that being said, guys, thank you guys so much for spending some time with me at the Deep Voice Podcast. I'm Myles once again. For those of you who are new, if you are watching on YouTube, make sure you drop a like and subscribe. If you're new, go in the description and click on the social media links, and you'll find the Spotify, the Twitter, the Instagram, and everything else where we post more of our content. And if you're listening on Spotify, the link will be attached so that you guys can do the same thing. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. We're going to cover some NFL news. I feel like I've been neglecting some football stuff since my last 2 episodes now have been basketball, so we're going to cover some NFL stuff in the next episode. So catch you guys in the next episode.